Well, hey, good morning, everybody. This is Jill. It's Wednesday. We're going to paint today. It's January. A lot of new things today. So I hope everybody's doing good. I'm going to give everybody kind of a chance to get in here just a little bit, and I'm going to get my comments on. Deb's here. Lisa's here. Lynn is here. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Remember, we're using StreamYard. And so for some of those, some of you who are out there that maybe haven't used it before, or you're kind of getting used to using it, make sure that you give StreamYard permission to show me your account. That way, when you come in and you make some comments, it lets me know who you are. Otherwise, it just says Facebook user, but I'll still know who you are after the fact. You know, when I kind of go back through the comments, it'll show me who you are after the fact. So, but anyway, Jill is here. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. So today is January the 5th. This is my free demo that I do with everybody once a month. And welcome to all of you who are here. If you are enjoying the free demo once a month and you would like to paint with me more often, I would love for you to consider joining my membership. So my membership, we paint every week, and you also have access to a lot of other pre-recorded instructional content that's available in what I call my portal online. And you have access to a lot more things, and we get to paint more often. And as I start my traveling here in the next few weeks, it's going to expand what I'm going to be able to offer as well. And I look forward to painting some new and exciting locations and sharing all of that with you as I'm traveling. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun in that way for you as well. So good morning, Tia is here. Hey, Mary Lou, good morning. So good to see you here. Ralph, hey, good morning. So glad to see you. All right, so I shared the Cosmo photo, and hopefully everybody was able to download that without any trouble. I wanted to just do something kind of fun with some bright colors this morning, and I'm going to just really jump into it here in just a second. I'm going to wait. I know that we had about 30 people that had said they wanted to be here, so I'm going to kind of wait just maybe a minute or two before we kind of jump into it, because I know sometimes people come in a little bit late, and it just happens. I know how that is. So I hope everybody's having a really good new year. We are making some good progress on the bus. We've had some weather delays just because it's unseasonably cold here in Georgia and wet. And so we have the whole time that we've been working on the bus, it has been outside with no cover. We don't have like a building, a big garage area that we can park the bus into. So we've just been having to hope that the weather cooperates with us. And for the most part, it has been okay, but we've had some delays here this month with, some freezing rain and some different things like that, making it really difficult to paint and, run electrical wires and, a lot of different things like that. So hopefully we're going to be back on track with all of that. And I'm going to be sharing some updates with you on that pretty soon. We've just been really busy getting the work done. And I think I had mentioned that before. I am making some video content, recording some things about all the things that we're doing, but having time to also turn that into videos to share with everybody is a little bit pressing for time right now. So but it's coming. Okay, so everybody's going to get to see what we're doing, what's going on, and all the behind the scenes and that kind of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, guys. So I'm going to flip over to the work area and kind of take a look at this. Let's take a look at this photo before we get started. So I've got it here on my iPad. So beautiful, vivid color, and lots of hot pink, and a really nice dark texture in the background. That's one of the things that that kind of attracted me, was that really nice contrast between these vivid colors and all this dark back here. So I want to keep this really loose and fun, and some quick brushwork, some mark making, some different things like that. And so let's just kind of jump into it. I'm going to start I'm just using my pencil, and I'm not going to carefully draw these flowers, but I kind of want to just use my pencil just to place everything. There's three sort of bright colored yellow centers for these flowers, and I'm just kind of, just mapping out sort of their placement and shape somewhat. And I do want to keep this sort of loose and abstract with a nice soft flow to it. So I'm not going to get overly detailed with this, but I'm just kind of mapping out the shapes here, just with my pencil. I think this one's going to be really fun to do. So painting flowers, depending on the flower, it can be a challenge for me. I think it depends on I think roses are probably the hardest ones to paint for me, for my part, but I think they're very fun. I love all the shapes and textures and colors, and it's a lot of fun. All right, so I've kind of got all of my flowers positioned on here onto my paper. I'm going to hold it up just so you can kind of see just how loose my line work is. Very loose, almost like a little cartoon line there. Just a really soft, not a lot going on. And if you've got questions or anything like that, I'm definitely going to continue to check back over to the comments just to make sure that you guys don't have anything. There are a few, I think there's maybe a couple of stems that I'm seeing kind of coming in here into play. I'm just going to put those in, and that's it. That's it for the drawing. I think that's really all I want to try to do to get that in there. I'm going to start with my spritz bottle, and I'm just going to spray the whole paper lightly, and then just with my bigger round brush, I'm just going to kind of smear everything around. Nice coat of water. And those really bright yellows, I'm going to get into my cad yellow for those as a start. I'm going to get that out and just kind of go right here in the center and just mark those yellows. Just some cad yellow, straight cad yellow. I want it to be really nice and vivid. And it's going to spread out a little bit, and that's fine. We kind of want it to do that a little bit. And then I'm going to get into my Quin Gold. There's a few little spots that I want to try to add a little bit of bright color into the background, and I can see that there's some sort of little glowing thing happening out there in the background in a couple of places, and I'm just sort of putting that in there just to have some little yellow pops. And I'm even going to take some of my Quin Gold and just sort of drop in just a little bit of that deeper color right on the bottoms of the little centers of my flowers there, just to give a little extra something there. All right, now I'm going to clean out my brush. I'm going to get into my hot pink, my opera rose, and hopefully you've got a hot pink. If you don't have one, it'll be a little challenging to get these bright colors, but the hot pink works really, really well for this. I'm going to take a minute to really saturate my little section of color here. I want to get a lot of this pink out. Here we go. All right, just want to make sure I've got plenty going on here. And so I'm going to start kind of with this the darker flower first. And I'm just going to kind of come in, just lay the color in sort of the shape. I'm going to the outer edges of the petals somewhat, getting that in there. And then for the lighter, the lighter flowers, they're almost like a lavender. I'm getting into my purple just a little bit, and I want to thin that, add a little bit of my pink to it, and I want to keep it a lighter color, but it is kind of a lavender. I want to just add a little bit of that mixture in here on both sides here. Just kind of keeping a little bit of color difference there, because I really like the fact that that really bright pink one stands out so strong. There we go. All right, so you can tell already there's no hint of detail, no hint of, zooming in and getting every little detail. We're just establishing color. We're just establishing some base values into the piece. And that's all I want you to be kind of thinking about. I'm going to get into my cobalt blue. Everything is still wet. I'm still just adding tone and color into the piece here. This is just my cobalt blue, and I'm going to come in and sort of add this in a few places where I'm seeing some of that sky color in the background. You can kind of see that, the flowers are very heavily focused, but toward the background, there's just a lot of random shapes, that are kind of showing up back there. But it really is, that distant sky that's back there. And in the beginning, this is almost looking like some kind of, patchwork quilt, kind of a lot of different colors going on. But we're just kind of laying in some values, laying in some colors, and then we'll start to bring it together a little bit, keeping it really loose. And I'm also going to get into some green here. So I'm using a Daniel Smith color called Serpentine Green. I've got it here on my palette. I keep it on my palette pretty much all the time now. And I'm going to kind of mix that in with some of this purple that I had, a little bit of that blue. The serpentine by itself is a little bit too vivid. I want to kind of deepen it just a little bit. So I'm adding a little bit of blue and just a tiny little bit of the pink. And I'm going to come in, and there's just some random green bits that I'm seeing, these almost like these little needles. I'm just seeing them there. And I'm not trying to really paint all the needles, but I'm just trying to add some pops of green color into the composition where I'm seeing it. Everything is still really wet. Lots going on here. And in the beginning, if you're not used to painting this way, just really loosely and just really blocking in lots of color, this may feel a little random and kind of not really having a sense of control about what's going on. But I promise you, it'll all come together. But the main thing is to really get everything in here, all the colors kind of established and some background tone, and just filling everything up with some color here. Because we want to keep this really vivid and bright. All right, so I'm going to hold this up so you can kind of see what I've got going on here. All right, so very loose. We don't have any details worked out yet. We don't even really have any serious shapes worked out yet. We're just kind of blocking in color and getting lots of stuff going on here, but I'm being really careful to keep this, especially this really bright flower in front. I want to keep that really light, really bright, lighter values going on in all the flowers, because we are going to push all those darks down pretty heavy in the background, but let's just keep all these things kind of light and middle tone right now. I've got everything covered with some kind of color that I'm seeing, and now I'm going to dry this so I can start adding some layers on top. All right. All right, so what I want to do now, there's a lot of nice textures going on, visual textures going on in the background. If I look carefully, I can see that whatever these little needles are back here, they're giving me a really nice texture. Just a lot of linear line work going on in there in the background, but they're obviously a lot darker than the flowers. But I kind of want to start doing something that's going to allow me to see a little bit more of this texture back here, and I'm going to use my wax to do that. So I'm using Gulf wax, And if you've not been with me before, I'm just going to show it to you. You just buy this in the grocery store in the canning section, okay? And it's sheets of paraffin is what it is. And so you can take a piece out and cut a block off like I've done here. And sometimes, the block is a really coarse, brute kind of instrument. There's not really a sharp point on here. But if you want, you can take a razor blade and kind of shave down a little bit of a point sometimes. And I'm actually going to do that now, so just so you can see it. So I'm just taking the razor blade and, oops, I guess I need to move my board so that I don't get wax shavings all over it. But I'm going to take the wax and I'm just using it to push and very slowly. I don't want to do it really fast because the paraffin is really brittle, and if you press on it too hard it can kind of crumble and crack. And so I'm just literally kind of shaving a little bit of a point here on the end of this. And you can kind of do this however you want to. If I wasn't doing it as a demonstration, I might actually be pushing the blade away from me, but it's kind of hard to do that and also let you see what's happening. But I'm just using the razor blade to just slowly take off little chips. And it slices through really easily. But paraffin is brittle and it likes to crumble and break if you press on it too hard, So I'm just working at shaping a little bit of a point on the end here so that I can get just a little bit finer detail than just having a really wide line. It is possible to get wax in a crayon format. I've seen watercolor, it is a watercolor supply, I guess you would call it, but they're hard to find, but they're little wax crayons meant for wax resist crayons, I guess is what they're called. And every time I go to look for them, they're either out of stock, sold out, no longer available. A lot of them have been discontinued. And so I just gave up on trying to always find them, and I started using the paraffin wax. And I actually kind of think it works a little better. You do have the the work of maybe shaping it if you want to, but you can see I've got a nice little point right here that lets me do a little bit more finer line than what I might have been able to do before. So a little bit messy, I guess, but all right, so kind of shaped that a little bit. And in case anybody is wondering, I don't know if I can answer this completely, but if you use wax in your work, and if you're thinking of maybe putting a watercolor painting into a competition or an exhibition where it's watercolor only, and you've used wax, I think that it's going to be fine. It's just considered a masking medium. And also paraffin has a continual shelf life, so I don't think you're going to run into any, sort of archival issues with it. It's very inert and doesn't change your colors and just stays with your painting forever. Okay. All right. So let's see. I see a comment here. I just want to share this right quick. Ralph is saying that he uses candles in different thicknesses for drawing. Absolutely. You can use candles. If you can use candles for sure. The only thing with using candles that you might run into sometimes is that the candles they're composed with different components, and that may or may not be healthy for your painting in terms of archival quality and yellowing in the future. I know that the paraffin is completely inert and it's not going to change color on you, but you still get the resist effect with candles for sure. All right, so I've got my little wax here, and I'm just going to start by kind of drawing with it, and I'm seeing little lines, those little needles, little blades, or whatever they are back there, and I'm just going to kind of start adding a few little lines with my wax, kind of drawing with it to sort of get some of those little shapes of that I'm seeing back there. There are even a few popping up here in the top portion of the area here. So I'm just kind of coming in and just making little lines. I'm putting some pretty good pressure, with the wax to get it to resist. You definitely want to press down pretty hard. I really want to lay the wax on there. And, it's kind of hard to see, obviously, because it's completely transparent in the beginning. But what I've been working at doing is, making marks to represent these little needles, these little fine strands back there in the background of the photo. All right, so now that I've got that in there, I'm going to get into my green again. This is my Serpentine Green, and I'm going to add some more of my cobalt to it. I want to get it kind of dark, a darker green. And I'm adding blue to it to push the value just a little bit. You can add red to it, but it's going to take out some of the, it will mute your green. But I want to keep mine a little bit more vivid, so I'm adding blue to it. So I'm coming in here onto just some dry paper, and I'm just adding a little bit of that dark green in here, and I can already start seeing some resist happening. And what I want you to be careful about when you start adding some dark color to the background, make sure that you start negative painting around your flowers. We don't want to cover those up. So I'm just adding a little bit of that dark green in here, and it's really nice to see it start resisting. I'm going to clear out my brush just a little bit so that I have just got a little bit of water now, moving around, keeping things dark still back here, negative painting around my little flowers. I'm getting up into this little purple one up here. I want to get some more blue. I want to be able to be brave and play with my color, and just come in here with some really dark value, just like I'm seeing in the photo, and just really lay that in there. But look what's happening. Look what's happening with the resist. See those little marks that I made with the wax earlier? They shine now just because of coming in there with a little bit darker value, and really just making these other colors. Look how nice this pink is, just pops now. All right, so I'm just going to kind of keep working through. My paper is dry, and I'm varying my tone with my dark background color. I'm using some water here, clear water, to just kind of vary the tone a little bit. I'm letting it get a little bit lighter as I move around to this side, and then I can go back to dark again. There's some more of that blue that I'm seeing, especially over here on this side. And I start to see some resist, which is always fun, always nice to see that. You just want to really commit to those wax lines to make sure that they're nice and heavy, so that they really do keep that pigment out of the way. Still continuing to be careful and kind of maintain my edge around my flowers. I don't want to lose that. That gives me, the difference between the colors, and it also gives me that nice sharp contrast that I want to. And in this process, I'm trying to be mindful of value as well. So I'm kind of playing with my color. I'm using blues and greens that I see in there. And, there's even some places where the colors are even darker. I could even come in with some of my bloodstone and add a little bit of really dark value. If you wanted to keep it more purple, you can, I'm just grabbing some purple and coming in here with it, adding it in some places where I'm seeing some darker value. That really dark value next to the really lighter values really makes it really nice, sharp contrast. It's really pretty. And I'm just letting the colors mingle. I'm not forcing it. I'm letting the medium just kind of do what it wants to do. And that's kind of one of the hard things about watercolor, is that it does want to just sort of do things. And we spend a lot of time fighting that as watercolor painters. And I'm trying to learn and feel like I'm getting better at it, of just letting the color tell me kind of what it wants to do, just being comfortable with it moving around and doing whatever I want, doing whatever it wants, and me being comfortable with that. All right, so I'm just kind of making an adjustment on the shape of my flower edge, just kind of playing in this section for just a second. if I need to, I can drop down to a little bit smaller brush just to kind of control the size of my brushwork and also how much paint I'm delivering. I need to get into some little nooks and crannies here around the edge of my flower. If you feel like you've sort of maybe lost the edge of your flower or are not quite sure where it is anymore, it's okay to, go back in there with your pencil and, you can kind of redefine, reestablish some areas if you feel like they're lost. All right, I'm going to do the same thing up in the top now. I'm just going to kind of let this area sit and dry for just a second. Let me look right quick just to make sure. Oh, this is good. Yeah, somebody says sometimes I have used a Crayola white crayon, but it creates an opaque um, creates opaque nature in the area that it's used. This is true that because the white crayon, it's that white is actually a pigment in there. So when you put that down, you are definitely getting you're adding some opacity, you're adding some white masking, basically, is what you're doing. It will resist, but you will have sort of a cloudy kind of look potentially, as a result. But crayons are fun to experiment with. Um, the thing that you want to be able to think about in the process of using a wax resist that has color in it, like a crayon, is just making sure that you're using it in such a way that it's still going to show up in terms of value. We've all, if you take a white crayon and you make a mark on a white paper, you don't see it. It's not there. But if you take a white crayon and you make a mark on a piece of black paper, you definitely see it because you've got that contrast. So just be mindful of that when you're using anything like that you want to experiment and play with, that you're still experiencing contrast. All right, I'm just continuing to add a few more colors in here. That cobalt is really intense right here. I'm just seeing it in the photo, so I kind of want to capture that a little bit. And I'm still using my brush to make sure I'm going around these petals. I don't want to cover them up. I want to be able to know that these are still in here, just a little back painting, negative painting around these shapes. But look how these flowers are really starting to pop out. Really, really starting to pop out. In the beginning, the flowers may not have felt, quite dark enough, but we hadn't really got into that area yet where we were putting these nice rich darks in the background. So once you start adding some values and colors in there, really starts to take shape and the flowers really start to show up. All right, I'm going to drop down to a little bit smaller brush just because I got some tinier, smaller areas to work in. I'm getting some blue and purple, and again, you can just play with this. It doesn't have to be my exact color combination. Just play and have fun. The main thing is that the values are dark. Okay, you definitely want to do that. We want to see that contrast, that really, heavy contrast between the petals and the flowers, between the petals and the background there. All right. Super fun. So I'm just using my little dagger brush to kind of come around, um, capture some of these edges of my flowers. And they're just really starting to stand out. I don't have any kind of details going on in my flowers just yet, and that's okay. I'm just kind of not at that point yet, and it's okay. Just getting these shapes kind of situated here in the background. Lots of nice color going on, and and again, don't be afraid to play. I'm just dropping in colors. I'm keeping them really, I'm not doing a lot of blending and smooshing everything together. I really want it to have a nice, wild kind of look to it. I'm getting into my Quin Gold. And Quin Gold, if you've been with me for a while, you know that's one of my favorites. And I love the qualities that it has. it has this ability to kind of push the other colors away, even though it's a lighter value. It's just part of its composition, but I can come in with a little bit of my Quin Gold and drop it in, and it'll just start to kind of push the other colors away. I'm just going to drop it in a few places. Just anywhere I want a little pop of warmth. I can even bring some down into the bottom if I want to, and I'm not painting any particular shape. I'm just sort of dropping the color in. And look already how just the background, I've just been kind of playing and dropping heavy color in and not over mixing and letting colors kind of be next to each other without blending them together. Just let them kind of, they'll cooperate in the way that they want to and give you some of these nice nice shapes. And then look how vivid and bright the flowers are just popping against that dark background. Super fun. All right, let me kind of pay a little bit more attention over on this side. I've got a few little spots where I need to get these edges sort of worked out. Looking okay over here. And don't be afraid to just grab some color full strength and just drop it in there. I really am still wanting to see a little bit more cobalt. I'm just loading my brush up with cobalt, and I'm just going to drop it in there. A little bit down here too. I'm really wanting to see that cobalt. I had a little droplet get onto my flower petals, and I'll show you how I'm going to rescue that. I'm just taking a brush that's just got water in it, just some water, and I'm adding more water to that real quick, and then just blot it straight up. I don't rub it, but anytime you get a little extra where you didn't mean to, you can kind of do that. I see another spot over here. I want to do some cobalt. Cobalt is fun because it's, you know, that vivid blue, but it'll also sit up on top of some other colors. I'm seeing some pink in the background that I had not really noticed before, and I'm just going to experiment. This may or may not show up the way that I want it to, but I can tell that back in the background there is some sort of pink flower hanging out back there, and so I'm just adding some pink in here, and I'm just going to let it do whatever it wants to do. There's also a little bit of pink I'm seeing kind of up here. Just adding it in there, and it's very nondescript. I'm not trying to be, you know, I'm not trying to get a particular shape. I just see that color there, and squinting helps. If you see a color, just kind of put it in there and grab it. Let me kind of show you what's going on here. So you can see that pink that I put in there. It's blending with some of the other colors that are back there, but I've added just a lot of different color, and I'm letting those just kind of mingle and mix with each other in whatever way they kind of want to. I've got a little bit of, I'm going to let some of that color run. I'm just tilting my board a little bit. Got a little bit of a puddle here. I'm going to let it run to the edge of my tape, just and then mop it up just a little bit. Okay. All right. All right, so I got a lot of really nice things going on in the background. I'm going to, oops, I see one little spot that I want to, just need to kind of correct the shape there. Okay, all right, so I'm going to dry what I have here. Let me look right quick just to make sure I don't have any questions that has come up. Oh, Terry had an interesting comment. I'm going to share this with everybody. Terry uses bone wax, which is a sterilized wax. I definitely need to check that out. I don't know that I've even heard of that before. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that with everybody. That might be something that you could add to your toolkit as well. So, okay, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and dry what I have here. Okay. All right, so got everything dry here. Got a lot of nice texture and color going on in the background. Let me kind of hold that up again just so you can see. A lot of different things going on. I still got my flowers are really nice and light in value compared to my background, which that's really one of the most important keys to the success of this painting is just making sure that you're, regardless of color, make sure you're really capturing that value shift between the bright flowers in the foreground and then the dark background. That's what really makes this composition really work and come together. All right, so I'm going to get back into the flowers now. Kind of add a few things there. I'm going to clean up a little spot here on my palette. I've got a bunch of dark color here that I don't need. Just get that out of the way right quick. So I want to start working in some values into the flowers, but avoiding the temptation of overworking and adding too many details and all of that stuff. So I'm starting with a small brush, my dagger brush. It's got a little edge to it. You can see the point. So I'm using my dagger. If you don't have one, just definitely use a smaller round brush. I'm going to get into, I'm just going to start working over here on this side. I'm getting into some of my purple, and I don't need a whole lot. I just want some purple out here. And I'm going to get some of my hot pink. And I'm going to be using sort of a combination of these two colors, to create some value changes in the flowers here. All right, so I'm going to take a little bit, mix a little bit of these together, just a little bit to kind of create this, pinkish purple, a little bit more violet, pinkish violet tone. And I'm going to use that as sort of my shadow color, if you will, over here on this side. So I'm going to come in. I see that there is a shadow that's sort of cast underneath this little, the little center of this flower over here. But I'm just, being really careful to only add some dark value where I'm seeing like a shadow. The sunlight is definitely coming from overhead, so any shadows are going to be cast downward and away. So I want to be mindful of that. My focus is to just try to get some of these little shadow shapes um, in here, just the shadow shapes. I'm not trying to create anything else, just grabbing some of these shadows in here. Let's see. And if your drawing has kind of disappeared, it's okay if you need to sort of take a little time out and get back in there and rediscover it. The way that I drew my flower, actually, this larger flower actually is overlapping a little bit more than it would in the photo itself. So I'm just having to make some adjustments that way. All right. Coming up here into the top, there's something is casting a shadow on this flower, so we're not getting a whole lot of really dark color up at the top, but something is casting a shadow, but I want it to be soft. So when I come in here and add some of this darker pink, or this darker purplish pink, I want to make sure that I'm keeping it soft, so I've kind of deposited some color there, but now I'm just got a wet brush, and I just want to come in and soften that so that it's not real glaring. Part of that little flower is just somehow it's just kind of in shadow a little bit. And so I'm just adding a few values to just kind of indicate something's going on there. You can see I'm not adding a lot of details at all. That pink, the really hot pink, I'm going to add some of that right around the center of that flower because it really is, I really am seeing that happen there. I'm just going to add that in. And that's pretty much all I think I want to add to that little flower. I don't want to overdo it. I just want to add a little pop of color, but still keep the value, nice and light. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing since I've sort of got these colors already mixed and going on my palette. I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the other flower over here on the other side and do a similar thing. So I'm just really focusing on keeping those shadows that I'm seeing in here. Keeping things really nondescript, especially back here. This flower is almost a little bit blurry actually. So I don't want to add information. Don't want to add too much information. I'm going to keep it nice and subtle and soft back there. One of the things that can happen, I enjoy painting realistically, like most people do, like a lot of people do, but it is fun to kind of loosen up a little bit and allow yourself to, back off from some of the details and not put so much visual information. Your paintings and your drawings will be better for it if you can sort of save some of the information, and you don't have to share everything. You really can let it just sort of just kind of whisper quietly in the background, and it will still serve the painting really, really well. The camera gets away with adding lots of details. I kind of like to think, if the camera's talking, it's almost like a blabbermouth. It's just telling you everything, and like things that you don't even need to know or want to hear. And the tendency is to kind of put that into our paintings as well. And we think, well, if I'm seeing it, if it's there, I need to share that part of the story as well. And most of the time, that's really just not true. It's best to kind of emulate, kind of suggest, and it usually does a much better job of communicating what you were trying to in the first place. All right, so just keeping these colors really soft. All right, I've got a color on my palette. You can continue using your Opera Rose, definitely. I have a color on my palette called, let's see, Quinacridone Lilac, and it's made by Daniel Smith. I'm just going to get some here. You can see it's a very deep magenta, type hot pink color. I like having it on my palette because sometimes with the deep, the Opera Rose, it's hard to kind of get that color to be pink, but also a really deep color. You kind of lose some of it. If you've got maybe an alizarin crimson, you could kind of emulate this color by adding alizarin crimson and Opera Rose together. Alizarin crimson is kind of a common color that lots of people have on their palette typically, especially if you've taken a much more traditional route with painting instruction or that type of thing. I'm using this as my shadow color, and you can also just use some kind of deep red if you want to, if you don't have either of those. I'm just kind of going through this flower and looking for little shadow spots. I know that the shadows they are really dark, but I'm not using black or anything like that. I really want to make sure that I'm keeping these colors soft and vivid. I want them to be vivid. That's the kind of the key with that. I'm just going to kind of work through this little flower a little bit. I'm just adding some shadows, just like I did on the others, but it just changed up my color a little bit, to this more vivid pink. And you can still just get right back into your Opera Rose as well, and add some pinks too. There's a really nice contrast between, I like this, the petal that's right here, these two petals on this bright pink, they make a nice contrast to the light petal in the background. Same thing's happening over here. I want to capitalize on that in my painting because that's really going to help me keep these two, these separated and allow this one flower to really pop forward to the foreground by adding some nice contrast there between those two shapes. I'm just using some clear water to, soften edges and play with this a little bit. Like I said, I don't want to get, too bogged down and start making too many, sort of details or anything like that. I kind of just wanted to lay those values in and then kind of just move away from it, let it go, and get looser and looser with my brushwork as I'm going. There's sort of a warm tone to this pink. The opera rose can be kind of a cool pink. It has sort of a, it kind of leans a little bit toward the violet end of the spectrum. And so if you want, you can kind of come in here. You can add some deeper reds in places if you want. I might even, just for fun, I might even take a little bit of orange and just add in a couple of spots, just to have fun with color. I know there's not orange in the flower itself, but if I'm wanting to see a little bit of a color shift somewhere, I can really play and add another color that'll just kind of help tell the story of a value shift or a color shift without necessarily, sticking with that same color. All right, I'm going to spritz my whole page with a little bit of water just to soften everything. And I kind of like playing with the fact that colors from the flowers can bleed into the background. So I'm getting some more of my hot pink and just coming around. I might even get a little bit of orange in there too, just on these darker edges. And I'm just using my brush to kind of go around and soften any of these edges where they make contact with the background. Just rubbing it slightly. If I move color that I don't want, it's, I kind of moved a little bit of my green onto this petal. I can kind of blot a little bit. All right, so I think I've added all the color that I want to right here. I'm going to dry this and then come back in with some really heavy darks to kind of finalize the shadows and the stems and some different things. And I think we can wrap this painting up. Let's see. Let me make sure I don't have any questions. Oh, yeah, someone made a good point. You could use a bright green crayon for the leaf and foliage areas. You definitely could. You definitely could. Especially if it's vivid enough to sit on top of your other colors and it still be visible. Yeah, Joan says that Joan. Oh, thank you, Joan. She loves the background purples and greens. Yes, they do. Purples and greens are wonderful, and then I love popping in some blues and golds in there too. It really works out well. Let's see. I don't think I've got any more questions right now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let me dry what I have here, and we'll start finishing up with some really darker values. So let's see, I had a question here. Nancy's asking, how should we store excess wax? Will it be, it'll be a long time before I get through the whole block. Sure, absolutely. Great question. And with the wax, especially, if you're using paraffin, paraffin is it's a petroleum product, and it has been purified. And so it's just straight paraffin, and an inert, food safe, product, and it just has an indefinite shelf life. So, I've had this box, I don't know, a couple of years, and you can see I still have, look, I still have several of these blocks in here. They're not gonna go bad. So they'll last indefinitely. The main thing is, heat is the culprit. So you just make sure that you don't keep them somewhere where they could melt. That's the main thing. And paraffin does melt at kind of a low temperature. So even if in a hot car, you can, the whole box can just sort of melt onto itself. Let's see, making sure I don't have any more questions. Okay. All right. So as I was drying, as you know, that's my thinking time to kind of evaluate where I'm at with things. And as I was working, I thought it might be kind of fun. And you could do this with colored pencils. You could do it with watercolor pencils, crayons, anything that you wanted to play with. But I thought it might be kind of fun. I was going to use like a sort of this reddish purple. This is Crimson Lake is the name of the color, and just play a little bit with some line work in the flowers, but without overdoing it. I'm just going to wet my page with some spritz. I'm not going to brush anything. I'm just going to leave it like it is. But I'm just going to kind of start with this purplish color. It's not really a dark color, but thought it'd be kind of fun to, this is the star of the show, kind of this central flower here. And so I thought it might be kind of fun to just come in and add a few little extra lines or textures, visual textures into the surface of this flower, but without overdoing it. I'm not wanting to come in here and perfectly render a new shape and all this kind of stuff. I want to just keep it simple, just adding a few little marks there. And you could even take a green. I'm not sure if this one will be light enough to show up. I was just going to come in and maybe do some little scribbles in the background with my green, just because it's fun. And I'm just scribbling with it. I need a little bit more water to kind of activate the pencil, the watercolor here. Just adding a few little things. Let's see, even this would be fun. I've been using the cobalt just as a pop of color here and there. So I've got sort of this cobalt colored turquoise pencil, a little bit more water. And it might be fun to kind of have some of these stems that were up here. I love how this cobalt does, the pencil does against lighter green colors. And I'm just adding a few little lines and shapes with the cobalt or this turquoise, whatever color this is. It's just kind of fun. Still got some dark reinforcing values to come, but it's just kind of fun to just kind of play a little bit. There's lots of just busyness in these background spaces, and sometimes just adding some little scribbles of color that are in the right value really kind of helps to tell that story a little bit. It's kind of fun. All right, I think that might be all I add on that. I'll set that to the side. Let me hold this up just so that you can kind of see what I added to it. But you can see those extra little lines in there? Just, they're not exactly random, but they do kind of emulate that busy texture back there without overwhelming, without overshadowing anything else that's going on. Some down at the bottom as well. Just have fun with it. Just have fun with it. The main thing, anytime you're having fun with these things, experimenting, just be mindful of your values. We're making sure to keep the background really dark. So anything that I want to add in here, I want to keep it subtle and deeper in value so that it doesn't, overwhelm and kind of overtake the flowers, because they need to remain the lighter values. So in other words, I wouldn't come in the background and start adding a lot of white textures, because that would really detract, because it'd just be the wrong value. It'd be a lighter value, which would then in turn be competing with your flowers. So just bear that in mind. It's always about value, always about value. I'm going to dry what I have here. It's really wet. Well, actually, I'm not going to dry it. Let me do something real quick. I totally forgot about this. There are little stems on the flowers that kind of got lost just through the painting process. I'm getting into some purple, and let's see, what else do I want to use? I'm going to get some of my bloodstone. I'm just making sort of this dark color, and I'm even going to get a little bit of my my quinceanna to put in here. Quinceanna and purple go together to make this really nice, deep, sort of eggplant color. I really, really like that. So I've got this sort of eggplant color. It's sort of a purpley, purple brown kind of color. And so this is what I want to use while everything is still a little bit wet, a little bit damp. I'm just going to kind of come in and reinforce a few little dark shapes that I know need to be under here. And one of those is like the stem on this flower, on all the flowers. Just kind of coming in, I'm seeing some different shapes in here. And do this on wet paper. If you come in with the stems on dry paper, you're going to have a really hard, harsh line that doesn't give up. And you can even, kind of spritz your paper just a little bit if you need to get that line to dissipate and to break up. See how nicely this one is doing that? I just made the line on wet paper, but it's starting to spread and dissipate and just sort of giving me a shadowy effect, but I still have that nice dark value that I want to see. There's a few little, these little, whatever they are, those little needles. I'm just kind of, I don't want to come in here with a bunch of these dark lines, but I'm just adding a few to kind of incorporate again with all of that nice visual texture that's under there. And even just some little dark spaces that I'm just kind of coming in and going in between some of these little shapes and just adding little dark values. I just want to keep a busyness, that busy quality of natural elements that, how they're just all intertwined and crisscrossing one another. That's always exciting. And so I just want to keep a feeling of busyness in there. If you need to adjust your colors a little bit, I'm still working on that busy color, but I'm changing my, or that busy texture, but I'm changing my color up a little bit just to kind of add something a little bit different maybe. Let's see, I can tell that I need a little bit of value. There's not enough contrast between the top of this flower and the background, so I need to add that. I'm going to get into some of that blue again. And I think I'll add a little bit of this eggplant color into my cobalt just to get a really deep blue. And I'm going to come up here, and you can watch this happen as soon as I put it on the paper. Look at that contrast. Really make the edge of those flowers just pop. There we go. And I'm just kind of playing with it. I didn't come in here and just make a solid field of that color. I just sort of wanted to add it in such a way that it kind of feeds the composition, but it really just grabs the edges of these flowers to give me that super nice contrast that I want to see. There's a little bit of that happening over here that I could actually kind of reinforce. So now is the point where I'm just kind of going back through the painting and just looking for any areas that maybe need to be reinforced. Anything that might be going on. I really want to see a bright, oops, I really want to see a bright color on the edge of this flower right here. And so even though this is not really the color that the flower is, I'm just adding a heavier dose of kind of a reddish tone right up there, just to have a really, really hard contrast right there. So that's one of the things that's fun about playing. Color can, kind of take a back seat a little bit sometimes when you're really trying to focus on value, because value is really the storyteller. Value is what tells you everything that's going on with your form. Okay. All right. Let me look one more place. Let's see. I think I'm going to take a little bit of the pink. I'm needing a little bit of contrast here over on this side. Not much, just a little bit. There we go. And then I can use one of my colored pencils. Let's say I kind of like the idea of keeping it neutral. I'm just using like it's just I guess it's just a dark brown. I'm dipping that into some water here and coming into the little flowers. This is wet. Keep these areas kind of damp, and you can kind of do the little speckles. I'm not getting into a lot of detail with that, but I'm just adding those little speckles in there, whatever those little brown things are. There we go. All right, I'm going to draw what I have here. All right, I got one last thing that I want to do in playing, and especially, like I said, I use drying time as sort of a time to think about what I'm doing, really staring at my composition and just, squinting at it, figuring out, where I need balance, where I might need value, where I might need a color shift or something like that. And so we do have all these wonderful dark values down here, but I want to kind of recapture maybe some of the lighter values that might have gotten lost in the shuffle down in these lower parts. And I had mentioned earlier not to come in with white to do a bunch of visual texture back here, and I still don't want you to come in with just white, but I'm using some white gouache right here that I'm going to mix with some of my watercolor to kind of give it a little bit of a tint. I don't put the gouache back into my watercolor palette. I like to keep those separate, but I'm going to grab some of my green from my watercolor palette and just put it out here on my tape so that I've kind of got a little safe area to work here and so I don't contaminate my palette. But I'm going to tint some of this green with some white gouache because the white gouache is opaque. It's going to let it sit up on top of some of these dark colors. But if you notice in these areas where these little needles are, there are some highlights, happening on some of those. And I kind of like the idea of having a little bit of that show up so that I don't completely lose all of the texture. that's going on. Now, I don't want you to come in here and just randomly start making some textures. I want you to look at the painting that you have. Okay. For instance, I've got these are some of the marks that I have in my painting. So I want to use those as my guide. And I know that the sun is coming down from the top. So I'm going to, in some of these, put a little bit of a highlight on top of some of these little dark marks. They just kind of help bring a little bit of this, back into the composition a little bit where I might have lost some of that visual texture. And you can see already what just those tiny little bits of added value, in just raising that value a little bit really made a difference in just kind of bringing that back to life down there. So always be thinking about your values. If you've got them too dark, you can lighten them a little bit. If you need to, keep things darker, then go ahead and do that too. Let's see, I'm just looking around. I want to be very judicious with this. I don't want to just put it anywhere. I want to make sure that it's really serving the painting and, helping it be the best that it can be. I don't want to just put it anywhere. So, don't, at this point, I always tell students, paint the painting that you've got. There might not have been a light area or a light mark exactly where you've put one, but there might need to be now because that's the way you've painted it. So just work with the painting that you've got. I'm just using a wet brush to kind of take the tips of some of these and just blend them out into nothing. There we go. Just a tiny little detail, a tiny, tiny little detail, but it made such a difference in sort of bringing that dark area back to life a little bit. Okay, I think we might be done. Let me just dry this right quick one more time. Okay. All right. Very fun. All right. I'm going to take the tape off. If you've got questions or anything, I'm going to hang on here for for a few more minutes so that we can kind of talk a little bit if we need to. Um, I'm hoping that this was fun for you and kind of challenged any of you that might be, trying to really loosen up. It's so important to give yourself permission to expand in that area and let go of some of the things where you're really tight and really rigid. But this is clearly a nice take on the photo, but it is very soft and it's not highly realistic, but it really reads and gives us that feeling of these sprightly colors. um, I've got some color shifts in my painting from the photo, and that's okay. You can use the colors that you want to use on these things. It's really a lot of fun. Let me look. I'm going to let's see. Let me get switched back over to the with me here. So I'm going to look right quick to see if I have got any questions from anybody. Um, do, do, do. Oh, yeah, this is funny. I'm not sure who said it. I excel at busyness. Yeah, it's easy to do. It's so easy to do. And one of the things that attracts us so much to the natural forms and the landscapes that we want to work with, is a lot of that, wildness and all those entangling shapes and all those entangling colors and everything. It's really exciting to, a nature enthusiast, to especially to a landscape painter. And the thing that we want to do is try to capture that. But what we wind up doing a lot of times is overworking the painting because we're trying to really accurately render that, when really what we might need to be doing is just presenting a visual texture instead that that just sort of suggests instead of trying to, really, really copy exactly everything that's going on. Um, let's see, let me, oh, I've got a bunch of comments here. Let me back up and make sure I haven't missed um, anybody's questions here. Let's see. Hey folks, hey folks. I had some new folks come in just to say hello. Awesome. Um, um, Wonderful tips on rendering those thready leaves. Thank you for the wonderful demo on Cosmo Flowers. You're so welcome. I'm so glad that you enjoyed that. I hope that helps you. Let's see. Yeah, Nancy says that she looks forward to playing with the idea. Yes, any of the things that we're doing here, all of these, all the different, ideas and concepts that we're touching on in terms of value and how to save an area, to darken it, to lighten it, to bring some new life to it. All of those things are really good lessons that can apply to whatever painting that you're working on. So anytime you're finding yourself struggling with some value, just kind of look at it and make sure that you're finding contrast where it needs to be, because that's really the number one thing, is making sure that the values are working together to give you that contrast. Um, oh, someone says that they plant cosmos, so they're excited. Yes, definitely, absolutely wonderful. You got your own subject matter right in your backyard. Um, Wonderful. It looks like everybody enjoyed this so much. This was very fun, and I appreciate you hanging out with me today and going through the painting with me today. It was really fun. I will be painting with my members every single Wednesday. If you guys are brand new to the group, definitely keep hanging out. I have got a new video coming out on the first Wednesday of every month for everyone, and it gets produced here in this group live, so you guys get it firsthand live. And after the fact, though, I'll leave the video up here for a little while, but I do eventually take the video down. But I will, any of the public videos that I do, I put them over on my YouTube channel, so you can go over there. I've got lots of instruction over there. Go over there, subscribe, click the little bell, all that stuff, so that you get notified when I share some things over there. But if you want to paint with me every week, definitely consider my membership. I'll put a link in the description for the video so that you guys can get all the information that you need to get connected there. It's very affordable, less than $1 a day for you to paint with me on a weekly basis. So consider that. Enjoy this painting today, and do a couple of them. Change up your colors if you want to. Do something different. Do another one where all the flowers are blue, or maybe they're all yellow or something. You can just kind of switch it up and make it your own. So share what you've done in the group. I look forward to seeing it so that I can give you some feedback. And I hope you enjoyed this. And if you have more questions even after the fact, still post them in here. I'll get to them and check on those later, and give you the feedback that you're asking for. So thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it, and have a wonderful week, and I will see you next month here in the group. Bye.